Webinar off. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special and very interesting Insights and Innovation webinars with our wonderful partners at IAS. IAS are going to talk to us today, and the amazing Jess Mills, who's Country Manager of Australia and New Zealand, is going to kick us off and talk about how the US election has and will impact, and the lessons learned from there is going to impact ad success for Australia. And with an election around the corner in possibly May, March, or early first half of the year, it's very, very important and interesting for us to see the lessons that are happening global with that. And I just hit to hear an interesting fact, and I think I can say this, is that 47% chance that for whatever reason Trump might not see his full term out, which is quite interesting, probably partially due to his age. Anyway, interesting fact. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the amazing Jessica Miles, who's going to take things over. And if I just get everyone to put themselves on mute, that'll be fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks so much, Sam. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to analyze the lessons learned from the US elections and how they can inform our advertising strategies here in Australia. So as we gear up for that federal election next year, it's really essential to understand the broader implications of political advertising and some of the unique challenges and opportunities it presents. So while you might not expect the Australian elections to be as dramatic or the rhetoric to be so dark, and let's hope it isn't anyway, the US does give us a good insight into how to navigate the ecosystem during surging political content, given how polarizing their content could be. And it is important for us to reflect because 2024 is wrapping up as a landmark year for elections worldwide, with nearly 2 billion people across 64 countries participating. And this global engagement influences media coverage, public sentiment, and ultimately consumer behavior. And we're already witnessing how these dynamics can dominate our news cycles, affecting not just political campaigns, but brand narratives as well. And as we move into 2025, we'll also see over 20 countries hit the polls, including ours, as we head into our federal election. So let's consider firstly how marketers have responded during a crisis in the past, particularly in reaction to news cycles. Pausing ads or tightening brand safety measures might seem like a prudent approach, but it often leads to negative consequences. So first, we see sales disruptions. Halting marketing efforts can result in lost momentum and a decline in brand resilience. Secondly, we see a reactionary stance can limit media efficiency, and overcautious brand safety strategies can really restrict our reach. And then lastly, these practices can adversely affect minority publishers, perpetuating bias and limiting diversity in our advertising landscape. But how have marketers historically reacted to news cycles, and what is the impact? Well, it's time for us to unlearn some of our outdated marketing practices. We actually really need to harness the full potential of contextual targeting, with research showing us that 8 in 10 consumers say ad relevance surrounding their content impacts the perception of brand. And instead of avoiding news entirely, we should really be embracing that halo effect. So advertising in trustworthy news environments, which can enhance our brand perception. Additionally, we need to evolve beyond keyword-based solutions and adopt sentiment-based approaches that consider the emotional context of the content. And this shift away from keywords is really critical. So let me take you through this concept briefly because it will be important when we start analyzing how brands navigated the US elections. So when we leverage keyword-based technology, we look at words in isolation. In this example here, you can see the words love, fear, joy, and stress. However, keyword-based technology can miss the nuance of sentiment. For instance, words like stress and fear may initially seem negative. However, you can see here that fear and stress have been used in positive ways versus love and joy, which have been depicted negatively. So not considering sentiment would prevent brands from reaching audience engaged in meaningful conversations. So semantic analysis is a technology that identifies a page sentiment, so positive, negative, or neutral, and it's essentially the general mood of the page. And semantic analysis detects it by identifying and weighing all the negative and positive elements like nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs found in the page, and delivering a final weighted results of these elements. So here are some examples of how sentiment analysis works. The first sentence here, 2023 was a good year for us. This year so far has not been so good and we fear it's going to get worse, is negative sentiment because the negative elements are more than the positive ones. Then we go down to the second sentence, and it's positive sentiment because the positive elements found in the text outweigh the negative ones. And then finally, we have that last statement, which is 2023 was a bad year for us. This year so far has been great. It's neutral sentiment because the negative and positive elements are present in equal or very close number. So while emotion detection aims at identifying specific emotions found in the text, sentiment detection will tell you if a text is generally positive, negative, or neutral. And here are some real life examples. So if we take the first example, you can see the categories that the contextual technology is identifying, such as politics, infectious diseases, and so on. It also detects the sentiment as negative and then the emotions as sadness. And you can see how this works for the following two examples. So now that we know that contextual analysis and technology is superior to keywords, let's now analyze the US election. So I'm going to take you through three main areas in my analysis today. So the first one is how to scale brands amid surging political content and misinformation. Secondly is how to maximize political ad performance in a crowded ad space, specifically looking at swing states. And then finally, what are the key considerations for Aussie advertisers as we move into next year? So despite the US presidential election wrapping up, the media coverage is still at an all-time high. And one of the top of mind concerns for advertisers during this time is misinformation. We established something called the IAS election lab in the US to analyze the rise in political content and misinformation. And we also established it to test the scalability of our products for protecting brands from risky content without over-blocking or blocking responsible media. And for those on the call who haven't heard of responsible media, it refers to content that is trustworthy, accurate, prioritized, diverse, and inclusive reporting. So I'll now take you through what we found, and it is going to be a little bit chart heavy as we move forward. So the rates of risky political content and misinformation in the US increased in the first quarter of 2024, and this really highlights the potential threats to brand equity from unprotected campaigns. So compared to last year, risky political content rose by 29%, and you can see that in the first chart to be over 1% of all impressions measured in the US at the beginning of this year. Misinformation also surged. So compared to last year, we saw a 25% higher rate of misinformation in the US. And so what this data is showing us is that during this politically charged time, risky political content and misinformation are both on the rise. And so what is driving this? Well, we see spikes in tandem with salient political events like civil fraud trials and Super Tuesday. That first spike in traffic volume centered around the February 19th civil fraud trials more than doubled the Q1 baseline rate, and it was in the midst of a high-profile civil fraud trial in New York. Around this time, there was a sharp increase in content that included a lot of negative sentiment towards both political parties. And some examples of this are stories that reported the current president or low opinions of the current president, and stories that compared the previous president to, and the upcoming president, I guess, to authoritarian dictators. So what's more is that politics, like all news in general, can fluctuate between positive, neutral, and negative sentiment quite quickly. And the shaded area in this chart represents the increase in scale that is gained by activating segments that leverage sentiment and emotion to protect campaigns from emerging issues. So that top line indicates all content that was measured for politics. And then the bottom line is all content that was measured for negative sentiment politics. So what this is showing you is that using a negative politics segment as opposed to blocking all political content leads to significantly more scale while still keeping your brands protected from things like violence, anger, hatred, disgust, shame, and fear around politics. And we spoke about misinformation earlier, but it is also an ever-present concern in digital media. But high-profile election cycles also increase a brand's risk of ad adjacency to misinformation. So news-related misinformation appears to rise in conjunction with high-profile news events. And so this year, the traffic marked as misinformation peaked 2 days before Super Tuesday, marking a 3-fold increase compared to the Q1 volume rates. And the reason why this is important is because ads shown around misinformation and negative political party content also perform worse. So when we compare this to quality media, ads shown adjacent to misinformation content are half as likely to lead to a conversion and have a 66% lower success rate across negative political party content. And the cost per conversion is also higher compared with quality media, with a 29% increase in cost per conversion for ads adjacent to risky political party content. So in the heated environment of election season, the proliferation of misinformation can pose significant challenges for brands. So ads placed next to misleading or false information not only increase or damage a brand's reputation, but can also erode consumer trust. And brands really need to navigate this terrain with caution. In fact, 72% of consumers are holding brands accountable to ensure that they are not supporting misinformation or fake news. So what we are seeing is increasing instances of negative political news and increasing instances of misinformation, all spiking in tandem with salient political events. So before I run through what we can do and what we need to consider in Australia, I want to move into the next phase of the analysis. And with all the negative news and misinformation we need to avoid, how do we cut through a crowded ad space? So analyzing activity in the swing states can give us an indication of what we can do and provide learnings that we can take away beyond the political sphere. So our election lab explored contextual targeting across 7 key swing states, all the states from Arizona through to Wisconsin. And this was to pinpoint the top performing segments based on volume, media quality, and campaign results. So by examining data from the week of the presidential debate, we see how political advertisers can scale their efforts across the web by targeting high-performing non-political content to supplement their targeting alongside news and other political content. So political advertising is one of the most fast-paced sectors in the ad industry, and with candidates and campaigns vying for voter attention, it's essential to deliver targeted, data-driven ad campaigns that aren't just compelling, but that land with precision, driving meaningful engagement and influence when it matters most. So in the US election cycle, digital political ad spend alone surged by 156% compared to the 2020 election. And the lion's share of this spending is concentrated in the swing states because these are the regions where the outcome could tip the scales in the electoral college. These battlegrounds, in fact, have seen nearly 70% of the total presidential election ad spend this year. And this is why it becomes so interesting to take learnings from these kind of scenarios that are applicable to our everyday approach. So non-political ads excel when they align with contextually relevant content. For political advertisers, sticking strictly to political content can really restrict campaign scale and impact. So even during that high stakes June presidential debate, political content accounted for only 1.9% of open web impressions in swing states. And over half of that content, actually 53% carried a negative sentiment. So moreover, we've just seen that ads adjacent to politically risky content underperform, resulting in higher cost per conversion and lower success rates than ads placed alongside non-political content. So the solution here is that advertisers can leverage contextual targeting to direct their ads towards high-performing non-political content, reaching new audiences and supplementing their first-party targeting efforts towards news and other content. So here's an example. During the week of the June presidential debate, the highest volume segment in the swing states was tech enthusiasts, accounting for nearly 1 in 4 impressions served. Other high volume segments included categories like retail food, retail art and entertainment, and also sports related segments like sports enthusiasts and entertainment sports events. And in the crowded media landscape during an election season, simply reaching a large audience isn't enough. We really want to capture and hold their attention, and that is really key. So during the week of the presidential debate, our election lab identified the top contextual targeting segments in these swing states that drove the highest attention score. And those numbers there are the attention scores. And we measure attention, just as a bit of a summary, by assessing the visibility of the ad, the situation it was served into, and the interaction with the user. And this includes eye tracking. So leading the pack, as you can see, the content related to allergies and hay fever had the highest attention score, but others included Columbus Day, telco family voice, and upcoming seasonal fashion trends. So leveraging segments like this to direct spend towards additional high attention content will help political advertisers capture the eyes of attentive consumers where they're focused and therefore likely to consider campaign messaging. And just keep in mind that these segments are very US focused, and the timing of the year also plays into which segments we're able to drive the high attention rates. So we know that political advertising is not just about spreading the word, it's about driving real world results, like inspiring voters to donate, cast their ballots, all that fun stuff. So to achieve these goals, the political advertisers in the US had to focus on the right contextual targeting segments. And so the question is, which contextual targeting segments are most effective at turning voter engagement into action in these swing states? So to try and answer this, we used one of our products called Total Visibility, which is our quality path optimization product. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But we used the data from this to identify the top contextual targeting segments in the swing states during the week of the presidential debate based on the highest success rates. So these success rates are either clicks or advertiser-defined conversion. And what we're trying to find is the lowest cost per conversion. And given the context of this election, Spanish language, which effectively directs impressions towards content in Spanish, led the way with an impressive success rate of 0.35%. Close behind, you can see the following segments like life stages, buying a house, and CPG, so on and so forth. So now that you've got all this data on how to make an impact in a crowded ad space, what can we do to combine all these insights into next steps? So to apply this in Australia, we can crawl with measurement, walk with contextual avoidance, and run with contextual targeting. So the first step is to measure. So by just measuring, you can improve media quality, expand your reach, and protect your brand while verifying digital media. So we do recommend using quality impressions, which is our proprietary metric that ensures your impression meets the highest standards. So that's viewable by a real person in a brand safe and suitable environment, and all within the correct geo. We also then recommend you review your brand safety settings to ensure you have the right risk threshold set and are avoiding potentially dangerous misinformation. And this is really a good habit to start in general. So double check your settings regularly, especially if the current climate is contentious. And finally, start leveraging some type of attention metric. So whether it's time in view or the more advanced product like our quality attention, this will enable you to understand how media visibility, the ad environment, and human interaction can be combined to increase ROI, drive brand consideration, and boost conversion. So just to give you a bit of snapshot, when I'm talking about quality attention, this is our attention solution. A higher attention score is associated with a higher propensity for a click or a conversion event. We use a variety of signals that are bucketed into visibility, situation, and interaction. And for the eye tracking portion, we ingest Lumen data, and then we bring that up into one quality attention score. So once you're crawling, it's time to walk. And from measurement, we move to optimization. So to begin, thoroughly review your current keyword and domain exclusion list, check their length and ensure that they have been audited recently. Remove any nondescript or ambiguous words and consider refining the list to prioritize hyper-relevant brand content, such as lawsuits or product recalls. There is the option for you to share your keywords with us, and we can map them to relevant contextual segments, which then leads me to point number 2, to utilize contextual avoidance across topical, vertical, and brand-specific segments. This really allows you to steer clear of unique threats to your brand, such as market trends, industry-specific coverage, and also any issues related to negative sentiment directly tied to your brand. And this approach, like we saw earlier on, surpasses reliance solely on potentially ambiguous keywords. And then next, it's really important for brands to understand how their settings and contextual segments impact campaign performance and cost effectiveness. So leveraging a quality path optimization solution like Total Visibility enables you to continually optimize for both protection and efficiency, and it enables you to balance safety with strategic reach. And again, I'll just touch on Total Visibility briefly to give you insights into what I'm referring to. We call it quality path optimization, not just supply path optimization, because we're tying in media costs, not only with performance, but also with media quality. And this allows you to leverage meaningful insights to drive campaign optimizations. And this is possible with supply path breakdowns because it enables you to identify waste, adjust campaign paths to obtain that high media quality that is cost effective. And we also work to the same performance metrics that you work to, from conversion rates to cost per action to CPC. We also report on quality CPM, or what we call the QCPM. And that's the actual cost that you're paying for an impression that is viewable, brand safe, and fraud free. And finally, we are ready to run and cut through the crowded ad space. So to get started, with contextual targeting, you start by identifying content categories that align closely with your brand goals. Next, you incorporate sentiment analysis into your contextual targeting to ensure ads are placed in environments that match your brand's tone. By prioritizing positive or neutral sentiment, you also foster consumer or customer trust, and you create a stronger brand connection without sacrificing reach. And then from there, you extend targeting to high engagement categories beyond the direct context of your brand. For instance, instead of solely on news or political content, if you're a political advertiser, consider popular segments like lifestyle, entertainment, or seasonal trends that attract similar audiences. Because if you do this, it can broaden your reach while keeping your brand present in high attention environments. In those US examples, if we go back to that, we saw success in those swing states by targeting segments like Spanish language, pharma, retail, and tech. So given our election will be next year, I've also included some targeting segments that could be relevant to spark some of your ideas. So depending on when the election happens, but it's towards the end of the next year, for example, we could look to reach wellness-focused individuals, those moving through life stages, those making New Year's resolutions, or target policies to those in specific careers. And you can see the split between the 4 types of contextual segments, from audience, proxy, seasonal, topical, and vertical. Another example is aligning with seasonal shoppers, capitalizing on consumers who are thinking of those key sale moments like Black Friday, Boxing Day, or Christmas Day, or reaching consumers that are eagerly awaiting the warmer weather or planning a getaway from the cooler weather, with a focus on vacation, sporting, and the beach. So elections do offer us valuable insights into brand resilience and the importance of adapting thoughtfully in high stakes environments. So by focusing on sentiment-driven and contextual targeting, we can navigate these challenges, connecting authentically with the audience while protecting brand trust. So thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to exploring how together we can apply these insights in meaningful ways.
Well, thank you very much, Jess. Are there any questions from anyone? And so often there isn't. So thank you so much, Jess, for that very, very interesting presentation on and insights into the US election, how it's going to impact Australia. So thank you so much. And thank you for your insights on lighting as well. Some of probably the best lighting we have seen on the on either presentations we've had here. So thank you very much.
No worries.
For that, and thank you everyone for joining in. We look forward to seeing everyone. Brisbane agencies, we're in there tomorrow. Melbourne agencies, I think we're down in Melbourne for FLOT on Thursday, and then the Christmas party and the awards on the 20th. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.